Alright, so I guess I should just get this out there. It's been 3 years since my divorce, and I thought by now, I'd have figured out how to move on. But I haven't. I mean, I don't sit around crying over my ex, but life feels empty. Most days, I keep busy fixing up my house. It started with a leaky faucet, then I repainted the walls, and now I'm halfway through remodeling the kitchen by myself. But once the tools are down, it's just silence. I don't have many friends anymore. Most of them were ours, and after the divorce, it was like they had to pick sides. Some of them still talk to me occasionally, but it's not the same. No deep conversations. No real connection. Just a polite "how've you been?" when we run into each other. It's exhausting. Then there's Mike, my ex's brother. The guy should hate me by all accounts, but somehow, he doesn't. We weren't super close when I was married to Kimberly, but now, he's the only one who still treats me like a person and not some ghost of his sister's past. A few days ago, he hit me up and said there was some big event happening at the fairgrounds. Told me I should come. Said it would be good for me. At first, I was going to say no. Crowds aren't my thing these days. The idea of standing around a bunch of people having fun while I fake a smile sounded miserable. But Mike wouldn't let up, and I got sick of arguing, so I agreed. I figured at worst, I'd get some fresh air and a funnel cake out of it. And that's when I met Celia. Mike introduced us like it was no big deal, but I swear he had a smirk on his face the whole time. She's different. In a good way. Athletic, full of energy, the kind of person who makes conversation easy without forcing it. She teased me about looking out of place, and I shot back that she was just jealous of my amazing fair fashion, jeans and an old flannel, because I wasn't about to dress up for this thing. We ended up spending most of the event together, walking around, trying out some of the games. I sucked, she won a stupid stuffed bear, and just talking. It wasn't anything deep, just easy. Natural. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't carrying around this weight. Mike saw us laughing and made some dumb comment about how I was moving fast. I rolled my eyes, but Celia just smirked and said, maybe he just needed the right motivation. That stuck with me. We exchanged numbers at the end of the night. I don't know where it'll go, but it felt good. And that terrifies me. Because last time I felt like this, I got blindsided in the worst way possible. I haven't told Celia about my history with Kimberly yet. And honestly, I don't know if I want to. I don't want to drag that mess into something new. But at the same time, it's a part of me. It's why I've been stuck for 3 years. It's why I don't trust easily. And then there's Mike. The way he introduced us felt intentional. Like he knew something. And that makes me wonder, how much did he actually know back then? Because if he knew what Kimberly was doing before I did and said nothing, I don't know if I can look past that. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking everything. Maybe I should just see where this thing with Celia goes and stop looking for reasons to be hesitant. But that's easier said than done. Has anyone else been in this situation? Where you finally meet someone who makes you feel alive again, but your past keeps trying to hold you back. How do you let go of old ghosts without ignoring the lessons they left behind? Would appreciate any advice, so, I guess I'm actually doing this, writing it all out. Feels weird, but after the response to my first post, maybe putting this mess into words will help me figure out what the hell I'm doing. I've been texting Celia. Nothing crazy, just little back and forths. She's easy to talk to, which is nice. And she's direct, not in a pushy way, but she doesn't dance around things like a lot of people do. She asked me if I wanted to go for a run with her this weekend. Now, here's the thing, I don't run. I've done it, sure, but I'm more of a carry heavy things and put them down kind of guy. But for some reason, instead of making a joke or telling her no, I just said, sure. And now I have to figure out how to not die mid-jog. Mike's been acting weird ever since the fair. He hasn't said anything outright, but I can tell. He's got this smug look every time I mention Celia, like he's waiting for something to happen. I finally called him out on it yesterday when we grabbed a drink. You set this up, didn't you? I asked. Mike just grinned. I have no idea what you're talking about. Cut the crap, I said. You're too pleased with yourself. What's the deal? He shrugged. You've been holed up in that house of yours for 3 years, man. It was time. I stared at him for a second. And Celia just happened to be there? He took a sip of his beer before answering. She's my friend. Good person. I figured you two might hit it off. Then he gave me this look, like he was debating whether to say more. And maybe it's time you start looking forward instead of back. That hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to argue, but what was the point? He wasn't wrong. I've spent the last few years moving on physically, new house, new projects, but mentally? I'm still standing in the wreckage of my marriage, trying to make sense of it all. And the worst part? A small part of me doesn't want to leave it behind. Because if I do, it means accepting that it's really over. That everything I thought I had with Kimberly was a lie. I haven't talked about her much here yet, but I guess I should. Kimberly and I met when I was working for her father's timber company. I was young, eager to prove myself, and she was this smart, put-together woman who seemed like she had everything figured out. We weren't some whirlwind romance. We took our time. Or at least, I thought we did. Looking back, maybe I was just blind to the warning signs. I believed every word that came out of her mouth. That's what still gets me. The lying. The ease of it. Because by the time I found out the truth, I realized I had been living in someone else's version of reality. And now here I am, 3 years later, wondering if I'll ever be able to trust someone like that again. Celia seems different. But isn't that what I thought about Kimberly? Maybe this run will be just that, a run. Nothing more. But part of me hopes it's more. And that scares the hell out of me. Guess we'll find out soon, alright. So the run happened. And I somehow survived. Barely. I showed up to the park wearing my usual workout gear, old t-shirt, basketball shorts, nothing special. Celia, on the other hand, looked like she stepped out of a damn fitness ad. Bright running gear, ponytail, that effortless energy like she actually enjoys doing this. Meanwhile, I was already regretting my life choices before we even started. "You sure you're up for this?" she asked, stretching. I should have backed out right then. I could have made an excuse, said I tweaked something, or hell, faked a cough. But no, I had to try and act like I had this under control. "Yeah, I'm good," I said. Big mistake. The first 10 minutes weren't so bad. We kept it at an easy pace, talking here and there. Turns out Celia's been into running since college. She used to do marathons, but now she just runs for fun. I told her I mostly stuck to weightlifting, and she gave me this amused look, like she already knew I was regretting everything. Then she picked up the pace. I swear, I lasted maybe 5 more minutes before I felt my lungs give up on me. I slowed down, trying to play it cool, but she noticed. "Not bad," she said, jogging in place as I stopped to catch my breath. "For a first-timer." I pointed at her. "You tricked me." She grinned. "Hey, I didn't force you to come." She had a point. We ended up walking the rest of the way, which was a hell of a lot easier on my pride. The conversation turned more personal, jobs, past relationships, family. I kept it surface level though. I mentioned my divorce but didn't go into detail. Just said things didn't work out, and I was figuring things out. She didn't push, which I appreciated. Then she asked something that caught me off guard. "So what's the deal with Mike?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She gave me a knowing look. "He's been weird ever since he introduced us. Like he knows something we don't." I let out a breath. "Yeah. I've noticed that too." She tilted her head. "You think he knows more about your ex than he let on?" I hadn't said anything about that. Not directly, at least. But somehow, she nailed it. "Maybe," I admitted. "Mike and I weren't that close when I was married to Kimberly. But lately, I've been wondering if he knew something before I did." Celia didn't say anything right away. Just nodded, like she was letting it sink in. "Would it change anything?" she asked after a while. "If he did?" That was the real question, wasn't it? If Mike knew Kimberly was lying to me and said nothing, could I really trust him now? I didn't have an answer for that yet. We finished the walk, and before we left, Celia nudged me. "Next time, we'll start slower," she said with a smirk. "Next time?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She just smiled. "Unless you're too scared." Damn it. I think I actually like her. And that's terrifying, so yeah. There's going to be a next time. After our run, well, after my near-death jog, we've been texting more. It's not constant, but enough that I actually look forward to seeing her name pop up on my phone. It's been a while since I've felt that. 3 years, to be exact. But here's the thing, I still don't know what I'm doing. I like Celia. That much is obvious. But there's this nagging voice in my head telling me not to get ahead of myself. I don't want to be that guy who jumps into something just because he's lonely. And I am lonely. There's no point pretending otherwise. Then, of course, there's Mike. The more I think about it, the more I feel like he's hiding something. And now, after what Celia said, I can't let it go. If he knew Kimberly was cheating, if he knew and never told me, then what does that say about him? About our so-called friendship? I needed answers. So, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I stopped by Mike's place after work yesterday. He seemed surprised to see me, which only made me more suspicious. We cracked open a couple of beers, made small talk, but I wasn't in the mood for games. "Mike," I said, cutting to the chase. "Did you know?" He didn't even pretend not to understand. His jaw tightened, and he looked away for a second before sighing. "What do you want me to say, man?" "The truth," I said. "Did you know Kimberly was cheating on me before I found out?" Mike ran a hand over his face. It wasn't that simple. That was enough of an answer. I felt my stomach drop. "So you did." He exhaled sharply. "Not the whole time. Not at first." I stayed quiet, waiting. He finally looked me in the eye. "I found out a few months before you did. I confronted her about it. Told her she needed to come clean or I would. She swore she was going to end things, that it was a mistake, that she didn't want to hurt you." I let out a bitter laugh. "And you believed her?" Mike's expression darkened. "I wanted to. But yeah, I was an idiot." I shook my head. "So what, you just let me walk around like a fool? Let me keep loving someone who was lying to my face?" "I tried to push her," he said. "I really did. But she had a way of twisting things, making you feel like she was the victim. And I didn't know how to tell you without blowing everything up." I clenched my fists. So instead, I got to be blindsided. Humiliated. Mike looked guilty, but I wasn't feeling generous enough to let him off easy. "You should have told me," I said, standing up. "I know. That's not good enough." He sighed. "I figured that." I didn't say anything else. Just walked out. I don't know how to feel. Part of me is relieved to have confirmation. I wasn't crazy. Something always felt off about how it all went down. But another part of me is furious. Mike let me suffer when he could have stopped it. Celia texted me later, asking how I was doing. I didn't tell her everything, but I said I had a rough night. She sent back a joke about distracting me with another run, and for once, I didn't completely hate the idea. I don't know if I can forgive Mike for this. But I do know one thing. I don't want to be stuck in the past anymore. Maybe Celia is exactly what I need. Or maybe I'm setting myself up for another fall. I guess we'll see, alright. So I've had a couple of days to process everything with Mike, and I still don't know where I stand with him. Part of me wants to just cut him off completely. He had a choice, and he made the wrong one. But then I think about how he did try, in his own way, to get Kimberly to come clean. And I keep coming back to one thing. If I had been in his shoes, would I have handled it any differently? I don't know. What I do know is that I needed to clear my head. And Celia, intentionally or not, gave me the perfect excuse. Celia and I met up again this morning. She promised we'd take it easy this time, and she actually meant it. We started with a slow jog, then just walked and talked. It felt normal. Like two people who just enjoy each other's company. She didn't push me about what was on my mind, but I could tell she knew something was up. She let me bring it up on my own. "I talked to Mike," I finally said. Celia glanced at me but kept walking. "And?" "He knew." Her jaw tensed, but she didn't look surprised. "How long?" "A few months before I found out." She exhaled sharply. "Damn. Yeah." We walked in silence for a bit after that. Then she spoke up. "So what are you gonna do?" I let out a breath. "I don't know. I'm mad, but I also get why he hesitated. Doesn't mean I forgive him, though." Celia nodded. "You don't have to. But holding on to it too long? That's just gonna keep you stuck." I looked at her. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." She hesitated, then shrugged. "Maybe." That was interesting. I didn't press, but it made me wonder. What had she been through? After the run, or walk really, we ended up grabbing breakfast at this little cafe near the park. Nothing fancy, just coffee and eggs. And at one point, Celia leaned over, smirked, and swiped some syrup off my plate with her finger. "You gonna eat that?" It was such a small, stupid thing. But for a second, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Comfort. Not the awkwardness of first dates. Not the forced effort of trying to connect with someone new. Just ease. And that scared the hell out of me. Because the last time I felt this comfortable with someone, she turned out to be a liar. Celia must have noticed my shift in mood because she pulled back a little. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah. Just thinking too much." She rolled her eyes. Classic. We finished breakfast, and when we walked out, she nudged me. "You gonna ask me out, or do I have to do all the work here?" I blinked. She laughed. "Relax. I like spending time with you, Ethan. No pressure. But just so you know, I'm interested." I had no idea what to say to that. So I just nodded like an idiot. And now I'm sitting here, overthinking everything. I like Celia. That much is obvious. But do I actually like her, or do I just like the idea of moving on? I don't want to use her as some kind of emotional band-aid. She deserves better than that. But if I keep waiting until I'm 100% ready, I might never take that step. So, should I just go for it? Or should I take more time? I hate how much I second-guess everything now. I used to be so sure of myself. I miss that GUYSO I did it. I asked Celia out. Okay, technically, she asked me first. But I followed up, so it counts. After our run, or whatever that was, I spent the next day overthinking every possible scenario. What if I wasn't ready? What if I was just fooling myself? What if I was setting myself up for another fall? I went in circles until I realized something. I was looking for an excuse to back out. So, I texted her. Nothing fancy, just, "Dinner this weekend?" She hit me back with, "Took you long enough." "Saturday." I laughed. Saturday. And that was it. No drama, no stress. Just, simple. I kept it casual. Picked a nice but not too fancy place in town. Didn't want to go overboard and make it feel like some big pressure-filled thing. When I picked her up, she looked incredible. Not in a dress-to-impress way, but in the kind of way where you could tell she put in just enough effort without trying too hard. It suited her. The first half of dinner was easy. We talked about normal things, her job, physical therapist, which explains why she's in crazy good shape, my ongoing house renovations, random stuff like movies and music. There was no awkward silence, no fumbling for things to say. Just conversation. And then somehow, we landed on past relationships. I didn't even realize it was happening until she casually mentioned an ex who taught her a lot about what she didn't want. I must have made a face because she smirked. Not a great topic for a first date. "No, it's fine," I said. And before I could stop myself, I added, "I guess I'm just not used to talking about it." She tilted her head slightly. "Because of your ex-wife?" I blinked. "Mike told you." "Not details," she said. "Just that you went through a rough divorce. Figured I'd let you bring it up if you wanted." I took a sip of my drink, debating how much to say. But for some reason, it felt easy with her. "She cheated," I finally said. I didn't see it coming. Celia didn't react with shock or pity, just a simple nod. "That's rough. That's one way to put it." She hesitated, then said, "If it helps, I've been cheated on too." I looked at her. "Seriously?" She shrugged. "Long time ago. College boyfriend. I was young and dumb, thought I could fix him. Spoiler, I couldn't." I let out a dry laugh. "Sounds familiar." "Yeah." She paused, then smirked. "So at least we know neither of us are the cheaters in this situation." I chuckled. Silver linings. After that, the conversation shifted back to lighter things, but I could tell something had changed. There was a mutual understanding now. Like we both knew what it was like to have someone rip the rug out from under us. And weirdly enough, that made me feel more comfortable with her, not less. After dinner, I drove her home. When we got to her place, she unbuckled her seatbelt, then turned to me. "This was fun," she said. "Yeah," I agreed. And I meant it. She studied me for a second, like she was debating something. Then she smirked. "You gonna kiss me, or are we pretending this wasn't a date?" I blinked. She laughed. "Relax, Carter. I'm messing with you." Then before I could say anything else, she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't long or overly dramatic, just a soft, simple kiss. But it caught me completely off guard. When she pulled back, she smiled. "I'll see you soon." I nodded, still processing. "Yeah, definitely." She got out, walked to her door, and disappeared inside. I sat in my car for a solid minute before finally driving off, trying to figure out why I felt like my entire world had just shifted. I should be happy, right? And part of me is. But another part, the part that still hears Kimberly's lies in the back of my mind, is already trying to find reasons why this won't work. Why I shouldn't trust it. I don't want to be that guy who lets his past ruin his future. But how do you stop comparing when the past is the only thing you have to measure against? So the date with Celia went well. Really well. And that should be a good thing. But if I'm being honest, it's messing with my head more than I expected. I didn't realize how much I'd been bracing for things to go wrong. Like part of me is just waiting for the moment where she does something, says something, that reminds me of Kimberly. But she hasn't. Not once. And that's the problem. Because now I'm wondering if the issue isn't her, it's me. We've been texting a lot since the date. Celia's the kind of person who keeps conversations flowing effortlessly. She teases me just enough to keep me on my toes, but never in a way that feels mean-spirited. And she's direct. No playing games, no mixed signals. Example. Her, "So, are you asking me out again, or are we just going to pretend that kiss didn't happen?" Me, "Didn't realize there was a deadline." Her, "There is. And it's now." Me, "Fine. Dinner Friday?" Her, "Now was the right answer, but Friday works." I couldn't stop myself from smiling at my phone like an idiot. She makes things easy. And yet, my brain keeps trying to make them hard. This morning, I stopped by my usual hardware store to grab some supplies for the house. I was halfway through picking out some lumber when I heard someone say my name. And just like that, my stomach dropped. Kimberly. She was standing a few feet away, looking at me like she was surprised to see me. Like she hadn't completely upended my life 3 years ago. "Ethan," she said again, like we were old friends catching up. I hadn't seen her since the divorce. I never wanted to. And yet, there she was, standing in front of me like nothing had happened. She looked the same. Perfectly put together. The kind of woman who never leaves the house without her hair done just right. And somehow, that pissed me off. Because she was fine. She was fine, and I was still dealing with the wreckage she left behind. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a reaction, so I just nodded. "Kimberly." She gave me this small, hesitant smile. "It's been a long time." I didn't reply. Just kept my expression neutral. She let out a soft sigh, tilting her head. "You look good." I clenched my jaw. "What do you want, Kimberly?" She hesitated, like she hadn't expected me to be so blunt. I heard you were still in town. And..." She shifted slightly. "I don't know. I guess I just thought maybe we could talk." Talk? Talk? Like we were just two exes reminiscing about the past instead of what actually happened? I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. "There's nothing to talk about." Her expression faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. "Ethan, I didn't let her finish. I have to go." And with that, I walked away. I felt like my heart was going to beat out of my chest the entire drive home. Not because I still have feelings for her, I don't. But because seeing her reminded me of every single thing I've been trying to move past. And the worst part? She was fine. She got to move on, to live her life without consequences. Meanwhile, I've spent the last 3 years picking up the pieces. I thought about texting Celia, but I didn't. I didn't want my past bleeding into something that might actually be good. So instead, I threw myself into house projects for the rest of the day, trying to hammer out the anger and frustration. But no matter how much I worked, I couldn't shake this feeling. That Kimberly's presence, just that small moment, was enough to pull me right back to the past. I don't want her to have that kind of power over me. But I don't know how to stop it. I've got my second date with Celia coming up, and I should be excited. But now, All I can think about is whether this thing with Kimberly is going to mess with my head at the worst possible time. I don't want to bring Celia into my baggage. She doesn't deserve that. But if just seeing Kimberly can shake me this much, am I really as ready as I thought I was? I don't know how long I stood in my kitchen after getting home from the hardware store, just staring at nothing. Running into Kimberly threw me off more than I want to admit. It wasn't even what she said, it was how normal she acted, like we were just old acquaintances catching up. Like she didn't spend the last few years lying to my face. And the worst part? She looked fine. Like life had been good to her. Like she didn't carry any of the weight I still did. I wanted to forget about it, push it down, move on. I even thought about canceling my date with Celia. Not because I didn't want to see her, but because my head was all messed up and I didn't want to bring that energy into something that had been good so far. But then she texted me, "You better not be standing me up tomorrow, Carter." I already picked out my outfit. And for some reason, that snapped me out of it. So I went. I picked her up, and the second she got in the car, she immediately clocked me. "All right," she said, narrowing her eyes. "What's wrong?" I tried to play it off. "Nothing." She just raised an eyebrow. "Lie again and I'm making you run 5 miles tomorrow." I sighed, gripping the steering wheel. I ran into Kimberly today. Celia didn't react much. She just nodded. And it messed with my head, I admitted. She acted like everything was fine. Like nothing happened. And I don't know why, but it got to me. Celia studied me for a second, then said, "Did she say anything that actually mattered?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did she say anything that should change your life in any way? Or was it just her trying to make herself feel better?" I hadn't thought about it like that. Kimberly hadn't said anything of substance. She just wanted to talk. For what? Closure? A clean conscience? I didn't owe her that. I exhaled, gripping the wheel a little less tightly. "Yeah, maybe you're right." Celia smirked. "I usually am." That helped. A little. Dinner was easier after that. We talked, we laughed, and for the first time all day, I wasn't thinking about Kimberly. But when I dropped Celia off, she hesitated before getting out. "Hey," she said, turning to face me. "I don't know everything you went through, but you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not her. Not even me. Just yourself." That stuck with me. Even after I got home. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling the weight of what happened. But Celia doesn't push. She just gets it. And for the first time in a long time, I think I actually want to see where this goes. I didn't expect things to move fast with Celia. Hell, I didn't even expect to like her as much as I do. But here I am, sitting in my half-finished living room, replaying our last date in my head like some high school kid with a crush. It's pathetic. And yet, I can't seem to stop. I told myself I'd take things slow, that I wasn't ready for something serious. But the way she looks at me, the way she calls me out when I try to keep things locked up, it's different. She's different. There's no hesitation with her, no walking on eggshells. She doesn't try to tiptoe around my past, but she also doesn't make me feel like it defines me. And that's dangerous. Because it makes me want to let my guard down. We went out again last night, just something simple, a drive out to the lake, sitting on the hood of my truck, talking about nothing and everything. She told me about her dad, how he was always pushing her to be the best at everything. How she spent most of her teenage years trying to prove herself, only to realize later that she didn't need his approval to be happy. I told her about the house, how fixing it up became my way of keeping my mind occupied, like if I just kept busy enough, I wouldn't have to deal with everything else. At some point, she reached over and laced her fingers through mine. It was such a small thing, but it completely threw me off. Not because it felt wrong, but because it didn't. I didn't pull away. I don't know what's happening here. I don't know if this is just a distraction or if it's something real. But for the first time in a long time, I don't want to run from it. And that scares the hell out of me. I woke up today with this weird, unfamiliar feeling, like something in my life is actually going right for once. I don't trust it. Things with Celia have been easy. Too easy. No mixed signals, no second-guessing what she's thinking. She texts first sometimes. She calls when she says she will. She doesn't play games or wait for me to make every move. And that's messing with me, because I keep waiting for the catch. There's always a catch, right? I told myself I wouldn't overthink this. That I'd just go with it and see what happens. But the longer this goes on, the more I feel like I'm walking toward a ledge, not knowing if there's solid ground on the other side or if I'm about to fall straight into another disaster. Mike texted me this morning. Just a simple, grabbing a drink tonight? Like we didn't have that conversation a few days ago where he admitted to knowing about Kimberly's affair before I did. Like everything was fine. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. But then Celia texted right after, busy tonight, or can I steal you for a run? I stared at both messages for a good 5 minutes before finally replying to Mike. Yeah, sure. 7. Then I sent Celia, trying to kill me again? She just sent back a laughing emoji, and I'll take that as a yes. So now I've got a run with Celia and then drinks with Mike, and I have no idea which one I'm more nervous about. The run was, actually good. Shocking, I know. I kept up better this time, and we ended up sitting on a park bench afterward, catching our breath. Celia nudged me with her shoulder and smirked. You're improving, Carter. Maybe I won't have to carry you home next time. I snorted. I wasn't that bad the first time. She just gave me a look. You were about 3 seconds from collapsing. I shook my head but didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. Then she stretched her legs out and glanced at me. So what's up? You're distracted. I don't know how she does that. How she picks up on things so easily. Meeting Mike later, I admitted. Not sure how I feel about it. She nodded slowly. You still mad? I let out a breath. Yeah. But it's complicated. She was quiet for a moment, then said, you don't have to figure it all out tonight, you know. Just go. See how it feels. If it sucks, leave. Simple. Straightforward. That's just how she is. And honestly, it helped. Drinks with Mike weren't as tense as I expected. He didn't bring up our last conversation, and for a while, it almost felt like old times. We talked about work, sports, random crap. But then, toward the end of the night, he leaned back in his chair, watching me for a second before saying, so. Celia, huh? I sighed. What about her? He smirked. Come on, man. I see the way you talk about her. You like her. I didn't answer. Because yeah, I do. But saying it out loud makes it feel real. Mike studied me for a second. Look, I know I screwed up before. And I get why you're still pissed at me. But if you're waiting for someone to prove to you that they won't betray you, you're gonna be waiting forever. At some point, you just have to take the risk. I didn't say anything. He sighed. I don't know what's gonna happen with you and Celia. But don't let Kimberly keep screwing up your life from the sidelines. That one hit hard. I went home after that, laid in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. I like Celia. That's obvious. But do I like her enough to actually let myself believe this could be something real? Or am I just waiting for a reason to walk away? I barely slept after meeting up with Mike. His words kept looping in my head. Don't let Kimberly keep screwing up your life from the sidelines. I hate that he's right. I've been acting like I'm moving on, like I'm open to something real with Celia, but deep down, I think I've been waiting for an excuse to back out. I keep looking for red flags that don't exist. Waiting for Celia to let me down the way Kimberly did. And that's not fair, to her or to me. So I made a decision. I was done holding back. If this thing with Celia was going to crash and burn, fine. But it wasn't going to be because I let my past control me. I called her. Not texted. Cold. She picked up on the second ring. Well, this is new, she teased. Carter actually using his voice instead of hiding behind texts. I rolled my eyes but smiled. You busy? Depends. Is this a call to plan another run? Because my legs are still sore from carrying your pace. I snorted. No. No running. Just, you want to get out of here for the weekend. Silence. Then, where is here, exactly? Town. Life. All of it, I said. There's this cabin about 2 hours out. Nothing fancy, just quiet. Thought maybe we could go. I had no idea how she'd react. Maybe she'd think it was too much, too soon. But then she let out a small laugh. You're really bad at playing it cool, you know that? I exhaled, a little relieved. That a yes? Pick me up Friday. And just like that, it was happening. Tea was the first time we'd spent more than a few hours together, and I half expected it to feel awkward at some point. But it didn't. The drive was easy. Celia made a playlist, and we spent most of the ride arguing over which songs to skip and which ones were classics. She has awful taste in 80s music, by the way. The cabin itself was nothing special, small, tucked away in the woods, just enough space for two people who didn't need much. We spent the first night just making dinner, drinking wine, sitting by the fireplace talking about nothing in particular. It was comfortable in a way I didn't know I still had in me. At some point, Celia got up and stretched, then looked over at me. So, are you gonna kiss me again, or are we just pretending there's no tension here? I blinked. What? She smirked. Carter, you invited me to a remote cabin. You gonna make a move or just stare at me all weekend? I couldn't help but laugh. You're ridiculously direct. She shrugged. I don't like wasting time. And yeah, I kissed her. It wasn't some rushed, desperate thing. It wasn't like kissing Kimberly, where I always felt like I had to prove something. This was different. It felt like home. And that scared the hell out of me. We didn't talk about what any of it meant. Not yet. I think we both knew this weekend was about just being in the moment, without overanalyzing every little thing. But I can't ignore the way I feel when I'm with her. I'm not second-guessing myself. I'm not waiting for something to go wrong. I don't know if this is just the beginning of something real, or if I'm just caught up in how easy it feels. But for the first time since my divorce, I actually want to find out. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. I didn't expect the cabin trip to change anything, but it did. Being with Celia, away from everything, felt right. No pressure, no pretending. Just us. And I realized something. I don't feel broken when I'm with her. I don't feel like the guy who got cheated on, who got left behind. I just feel like me. We drove back Sunday evening, and as I pulled up to her place, she turned to me. You overthinking this yet? I smirked. Maybe a little. She laughed. Figured. Just don't overthink yourself out of something good, okay? I nodded, but even after she kissed me goodnight and went inside, her words stuck with me. I don't want to mess this up. But I also don't know how to stop waiting for the moment when everything falls apart. Celia's right. I overthink too much. It's been a few days since the cabin trip, and everything's still good. No weirdness, no awkward shifts. If anything, we're talking more, spending more time together. It's easy. And that should be a relief, but part of me keeps waiting for something to go wrong. Then today, out of nowhere, Kimberly texted me. Can we talk? That's it. No explanation, no context. Just that. I stared at the message for a long time before finally locking my phone and walking away. I don't know what she wants, and honestly, I don't care. I already wasted years of my life on her. I'm not giving her another second. I didn't respond to Kimberly's text. I thought maybe she'd take the hint, but she didn't. This morning, she called. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another text popped up. Ethan, please. It's important. I felt that familiar frustration bubbling up. The same frustration I used to feel when she'd twist things to get her way. I didn't want to play this game. But a small nagging part of me wondered, what if it actually is important? So I called Mike. He picked up on the second ring. You heard from her. I exhaled sharply. Yeah. She texted me too, he admitted. Said she needed to talk to you. I told her to leave you alone. That should have been enough. But something about the way he said it made me pause. Mike, what aren't you telling me? He hesitated. Look, I don't know details. But I think whatever she wants to say, it's about the past. I clenched my jaw. I don't need closure. I don't need her excuses. I know, he said. But are you sure you don't need to hear it just to put it to bed for good? I didn't answer. Because I honestly don't know. I thought about ignoring Kimberly forever. Blocking her, pretending she didn't exist. I told myself I didn't need to hear whatever she had to say. That nothing she could tell me would change anything. But the truth? A small part of me did want to hear it. Not because I wanted closure. I made peace with the past a long time ago. But because I wanted confirmation that I was right to walk away. That she was exactly who I thought she was. So I met her. One last time. We kept it public, some quiet cafe in town. When I walked in, she was already sitting there, hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she was nervous. Good. She should be. She looked up and smiled, like this was some friendly reunion. Ethan. I sat down. You wanted to talk. So talk. She sighed, stirring her coffee even though she hadn't put anything in it. Classic stalling. I don't even know where to start. Try the truth, I said flatly. That made her flinch. Good again. She finally looked at me, eyes softer than I remembered. I owe you an apology. I almost laughed. Now she was apologizing? Years later? After the damage had already been done? Yeah. No kidding. She nodded like she expected that response. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even deserve it. But I need to tell you the truth about what happened back then. I crossed my arms. You mean the cheating? I got the memo. She swallowed hard. It wasn't just that. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I didn't want to ask, but I did anyway. Then what? She hesitated, eyes darting to the side like she wasn't sure she wanted to say it. My dad knew. I blinked. What? She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding on to this for a long time. My dad knew about the affair. Before you did. I leaned back, stunned. Of all the things she could have said, that wasn't one I saw coming. He found out early on, she admitted. And instead of telling me to come clean, he told me to keep quiet. That if I played it smart, I could have my fun and still keep our marriage intact. She let out a bitter laugh. He actually thought it was just a phase I'd grow out of. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around this. Kimberly's father was the one who gave me a job. The one who shook my hand and welcomed me into his family. And all that time, he knew his daughter was betraying me? So what? I said, voice tight. You're telling me this now because you feel guilty? She shook her head. I'm telling you because I should have told you back then. You deserved the truth. I let out a dry laugh. And yet, you waited 3 years. I was scared, she admitted. And selfish. And I didn't want to face the fact that I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't say anything to that. Because I didn't care. The silence stretched between us. She looked down at her coffee, then back up at me, eyes pleading. Ethan, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything, but I need you to know that I did love you. It wasn't all a lie. I met her gaze, steady and unshaken. Maybe you did. But it doesn't matter now. She inhaled sharply like she'd been hoping for a different response. Like she still thought she had some kind of hold on me. But she didn't. Not anymore. I stood up. I'm done here. Ethan. No. I cut her off. You wanted to talk, so we talked. Now, I'm walking away. And this time, you don't get to follow. I left without looking back. I thought maybe I'd feel something after that. Anger. Sadness. Regret. But you know what I felt? Nothing. Kimberly doesn't matter anymore. She's just a chapter in my life that I finally finished reading. Later that night, Celia texted me, "You okay? You seemed off today." I stared at the message for a second, then typed back, "Yeah. Just had to close a door that should have been shut a long time ago." She didn't ask for details. She just sent back, "Good. Now open a new one." And for the first time in years, I think I finally can.